All right, for read aloud, I am going to be reading to my little friends over here. This is Freddie and Rosie, and they're gonna listen as I read Torpedoed along with you all listening. Um, and we are on chapter 16, and it is called Break of Day. And my joke for today: what did the toilet say to the other toilet? You look flushed. That's silly. All right, so I can watch my little buddies over there, make sure they are doing a good job of listening. It says Dawn, September 18th. The Royal Navy would come and rescue them. That's what Colin's mother had said. Pat Bulmer, the teenager whose mother had died, was still alive, but the nurse was dead. Colin, you must let go of the nurse, the others told him. But he knew they'd be rescued, so how could he let go of her? It seemed unfair. Finally, he tried, but he couldn't do it. Would his arms not move? Would his mind not let him? Eventually, one of the crew came over. Colin was weak. His arms had cramped up. He physically couldn't let go of her. But others helped, and now she's gone. Into the water they put her, just like all the others. So many from his boat were gone. They would get rescued, Colin was certain. He just had to stay alive. On the little raft, Margaret Beach was desperate and exhausted and in terrible pain. Her life vest was digging into her because she had spent the whole night pressed down on Derek to keep him alive. Her fingers were pinched and raw and bleeding from holding on to the slats. There, one night in Liverpool a week earlier, waiting to board the ship, they had gone to sleep in their comfortable beds in a lovely room in the Adelphi Hotel. Then, all of a sudden, they had heard someone banging on the door. Mrs. Betch, a voice said, the siren has gone. You must go down to the shelters in the basement. So they had gone down. They had to sleep on benches in the Turkish bath. Those benches had been terribly uncomfortable, but this was agony. Wouldn't it be better to just give up? She wanted to just take off her life vest and... No, Sonia said to her mother. She had survived 2 tumbles into the ocean. She was only 11. No. She summoned all her strength and yelled at her mother. No! On no account. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't. That's a terrible idea. Of course we're going to be picked up. Sonia was determined. She had hope. The will to live. What she didn't know was that their raft was breaking apart. Jack Healy looked around in the daylight. He didn't see anyone else. No other rafts, no lifeboats. Only a seagull every now and then. Sir, he asked Eric Davis, are we going toward Canada or England? Neither. Eric could have said. They wouldn't sail anywhere for very long on their little raft. But he reassured Jack. Back to England. I should think the real question was, would rescue come in time to save Jack's life? All night, Bess and Beth had been battered every which way by the wind. The waves of the lifeboat and their big life jackets had swollen up so much they kept cuffing them under the chin, making their skin red and raw. Their jaws were swollen. Their eyes were caked with salt, barely open. Bess knew she had to live. She had to get home. But it was so hard, being flung up and down by the waves. She was hurting badly in so many places, and she was exhausted, so very tired. With the daylight, she too began to lose heart. She looked around and saw nobody else. It was just them. Beth and her and the Lascar, barely alive, in the wide Atlantic. It was, Beth thought, a creepy feeling, like one that comes over you when you are in the country at night, with nothing but fields in sight. Beth felt this way too. It was lonely, eerie. Beth thought that maybe the smart thing to do would be to give up. She could go back to the green tunnel and sleep forever. Her tongue and lips were so swollen and encrusted with salt that she could barely talk. There was something she wanted to tell Beth. She couldn't hold on anymore. Let's jump off and swim south, she managed to say. Beth was tired too, so tired. But her mother couldn't lose her. No, she told Bess. I can't swim properly. We can't do that. Okay, Bess thought. If Beth would hold on, so would she. She would get home to her parents. She had to explain about Louis. Bess is holding on, Beth told herself, and so will I. They stayed where they were, the 2 girls on the overturned boat, holding on with their aching hands. It had been light for a few hours. Around 10 o'clock, 12 hours after the torpedo hit, Sonia Beach saw something. A sail? The rescue ship. "Look," she said to her mother, "there's a red sail on the horizon." "Of course there isn't," her mother said. "It was probably a hallucination." "When the wave comes up again," Sonia said, "everybody should look in that direction." And she pointed to where she had seen the sail. They were all hallucinating. Bess saw huge fish jumping. Maybe they were real. Maybe they were close enough to the coast to see cod. Maybe not. Bess saw trays of food coming toward her. On the ship, all she'd had to do was clap her hands, and one of the stewards would arrive, and she'd ask for a ham roll, and not one, but two would be presented on a lace cloth on a silver tray. Now she saw trays of food coming toward her, silver trays. Bess saw a ship. Bess saw a ship. Ship on the horizon, coming to rescue them. Everyone saw ships. When his lifeboat was in a trough, Colin would imagine that when he rose up on the next water, or on the next wave, there would be a ship. Oh, he saw one. It was not a ship. A bit of wreckage? Something else? Down in the trough again, he told himself. When you come up on the next wave, you'll have another look. He was holding on for dear life, as he had all night. It was terribly hard to hold on. The boat was still waterlogged. The water had so softened his skin that he could barely grasp the seat. The gloves his mother had put in his pockets were soaked through, so even they weren't helping at this point. But he could not let go and fall into the ocean. Out of about 40 or 50 people on his boat, Colin realized only a handful were left. The next wave up, maybe he would see a ship, but he had to stay perfectly still and hang on. Sonia was certain she had seen a sail, and she had. When they were up on a wave again, the others saw it, a red sail. It wasn't a destroyer. It was a lifeboat, a proper lifeboat. Not as good as a destroyer, but better than their falling apart raft. They tried to get the attention of the lifeboat. If they had known there were flares on the raft, they would have set one off. But they didn't know there were flares, just as they didn't know there was food. Up on the wave, every 10 minutes or so, the Betches and the others on their raft hollered, "Here we are, help!" The skipper of that lifeboat, Mr. Leslie Lewis, knew they were there. He had seen the raft during the night and had kept a mental note of the location. This was one of the 2 lifeboats from the SS Marina. It was full. They were crew members from the Marina and people from the Benares they had saved in the night, but there was room for more. It was taking a while because of the rough seas, but Mr. Lewis was determined to reach them. He'd been waiting all night. Well, there's a picture, little guys. There's a picture. What that looked like. On some lifeboats, only a few Corps children remained alive. Others, none. On Lifeboat 12, Mary Cornish's lifeboat, all 6 Corps children were still alive. Fred Steels and his roommate, Paul Shearing, Ken Sparks and Howard Clater, both from the London area. Bill Short and Derek Capel, both Bill and Derek had little brothers on the ship, but they weren't on this lifeboat. Ken Sparks had a good friend from home on the ship, too, 10-year-old Terrence Holmes, but he wasn't here either. In the morning, Mary discovered Father Rory O'Sullivan. He was awfully sick, in no shape to take care of the boys. It was good she was there. Taking care of the boys was her job now. It had been a rough night, stormy and cold, so cold, and hard to get comfortable, with the handles from the Fleming gear digging into her back. At one point during the night, someone passed around brandy. That morning, the sky was storm gray. There was nothing around them but waves. Every once in a while, some wreckage would float by. They saw no other lifeboats, and the waves were quite high, which impressed Fred Steels. Up and down, huge waves. They were all hopeful. They were all hopeful. Their lifeboat had taken on no water. It was quite crowded, but they would manage. Surely rescue would come soon. Ronnie Cooper, the Benares' 4th officer, captained the boat. He and the ship's assistant steward, George Purvis, decided to plan for more days at sea, just in case. At noon, Purvis gave out everyone's first meal since the torpedo. 1 sardine on a ship's biscuit and a dipper full of fresh water from a jug on the boat. He had taken stock of the food and water. He knew it all needed to last until they were rescued. There was no reason to think they wouldn't be rescued soon. Cooper knew the Benares had put out an SOS. Help had been called. A ship must be on the way, but still he planned for the worst. Mr. Lewis had reached the Betches, climbed into the lifeboat, and the Marina crew told the Betches, Doris Walker and Tommy Milligan, but they couldn't move. They were stiff and cold and in pain from their hours clinging to the raft. A few Lascars from the Benares took Derek and Sonia in their arms and lifted them into the lifeboat. Derek was wedged in with the Indian sailors. He warmed up quickly. Someone passed him a can of sweetened condensed milk. He sucked some out of the hole in the top, then passed the can to the person next to him. Everyone was given a ship's biscuit. Sonia was handed a can of milk, too. She thought it was disgusting that she had to lick milk out of a can that another person had put his mouth on, but she was very happy when they gave her something to drink. She got to sit right next to the skipper, Mr. Lewis, and talk to him. He cheered her up. He was cheering everybody up. The move to the lifeboat came just in time. The Betch's raft would have broken apart in less than half an hour, and still no Royal Navy ship was in sight. Hanging on to their overturned lifeboat, Bess and Beth whispered through their swollen, salt-encrusted lips. With a few words, they promised not to give up. The day had dawned hours ago. Where was the rescue ship, or even a lifeboat? Where was everyone else from the ship? Was nobody around? Maybe there was a proper lifeboat. Was that a lifeboat? The waves kept flinging them up and crashing them down. They held on. Beth wrapped a rope around her hand, but she could still slip off. Bess was just holding on to the keel with her hands. How long could she keep grasping the keel? They were just hands, 15-year-old hands. Up and down they went, the waves flinging their bodies over and over again into the boat. Their bodies crashing into the hole, the cork digging into their chins, their skin soft like tissue paper. They hurt so much. They were beyond pain. How much longer could they last? How much longer could Jack Healy last, or Colin? Where was the rescue ship? There they are rescuing some of them. All right, that is the end of this chapter.